One. Hey, folks. I'm here with Stacy Gray, Jules Polonetsky. Stay with me, Stacy.
Sure.
She's key to this. Key. So we like advertising here at Future Privacy Forum. We like it because we know that we don't want to pay for apps. We don't want to pay for websites. And we get that that comes with ads. And we get that those ads can't be dumb ads because you're not paying attention to them. They at least need to be somewhat relevant to hopefully be an ad that actually is timely and interesting. And of course, that creates the tension because too relevant, too timely, too data intensive becomes creepy, discriminatory, intrusive. So we're always trying to figure out how to work with companies, academics, advocates, regulators. How do you get the right balance so that data can be used to help companies make smart decisions, not waste their money, not waste your time? The alternative to some of these ads, if they're targeted, might be big dumb pop-ups. You know, for years in my earlier days at DoubleClick and AOL, we didn't have that much data, so we got your attention. Pop-up, no one liked that. But going too far. So we get annoyed often when people talk about advertising as surveillance. It's a computer optimizing and trying to make sure that an ad you see is relevant. Many of you often have seen an ad. You go to a website, you use an app, and then you are followed across the internet. You start getting ads that seem to know that you are the user. How do they do that? Typically, if you're on a website and you're on a desktop computer, they'll do it using a cookie. In the world of mobile apps, apps don't support cookies, so an advertising identifier is provided by the operating systems, Apple, Google, and that ID is available to apps and maybe handed to their ad network. So for instance, if you go use a certain app, that ad ID shows up when you are on other apps, and advertisers can seek to target that ad ID. People call it surveillance, and we're like, that's not surveillance. Surveillance is somebody you know, or who's a stranger, or a friend, or a spouse, an ex-spouse, looking to be spooky and follow you for some inappropriate reason. However, it does turn out that actually trying to track a particular individual might be possible in some very specific instances. So, Stacy, there was a story in Wired about some academic research, and what do these folks actually do?
Yeah, it was a story that came out yesterday, the day before in Wired, about spending under $1,000 to serve ads in a way that might allow you to track a particular person. This was research done out of the University of Washington, and what the researchers were trying to do was show not what the ad network could learn about you, but what an individual could learn about you using ad networks for mobile advertising. And to do this, first you had to actually have a person's advertising ID. That's a little tricky. In order to get your advertising ID, Jules, I would have to have access to your phone, or I would have to somehow surveil the Wi-Fi network and see the network traffic.
And actually, having access to my phone, you still have to dig in.
I'd still have to go into the privacy settings and go find it, and actually it's kind of hard today to find that.
But it's there.
But assuming if I were able to get your advertising ID, it's possible through some of these really budget-friendly platforms available on the internet today to serve ads relatively cheaply to specific advertising IDs. So in this case, I would maybe know that it was Jules that I was targeting to. And this is how app developers can send ads to people that have downloaded their app, for example. But if I'm targeting just one person, which would not probably be in line with the terms of service of any of these platforms, but if I'm targeting just one person, in order to surveil them, I could see, for example, whether Jules used his phone, opened up some of these apps and looked at ads in a particular location that I identified beforehand, maybe a sensitive location like a church or a synagogue. I could see how long he's using a particular app, for example. I could see sometimes what app he was using when he viewed that ad, and some apps are a little more sensitive than others. So this research was really very interesting because it's the first time that I've seen an exploration of the way that an individual, not an ad network or a mobile advertising company, use the power of mobile ad platforms to potentially surveil somebody.
I should say another way that somebody might get your ad ID if you're using open Wi-Fi at a cafe or the like. People are always warning you, beware using that open Wi-Fi. Now, the reality is there are encrypted services, and when you use those on open Wi-Fi, when you log into your Gmail, your information is not being sent in the clear, your password's not being sent in the clear, and the reality is most of us are indeed checking our email. However, going ahead and surfing and visiting or using an app where that data isn't likely to be encrypted, it is possible for somebody to snoop and perhaps capture that traffic.
Yeah.
So what can you do? This is a one-off. It's unlikely that it's easy for anyone to do this, but I think what these researchers showed is that if a determined adversary, and again, if somebody has access to your phone, they might be downloading some app that would secretly track you. So this might not be the most efficient way to go ahead and buy advertising and swamp a certain area, but they've showed that it is indeed feasible, and certainly something that the ad networks need to do more to prevent. You heard about Russians buying ads. Knowing who's buying advertising, if you have no clue and you're not vetting that the buyer is legitimate, that isn't a Russian bot trying to put deceptive ads on there. Clearly, those ad networks need to be stepping up and doing more and making sure that they verify, and simply buying one ad ID or some very small number in what appears to be suspicious activity ought to be the kind of thing that you can capture. But let's say you don't want this to happen to you. The one thing, we'll post the was it Wired article that described this interesting research, seemed to worry that, well, there's nothing you can really do about this. Here's the one big thing that you can do. That ad ID, that cookie of the app world, you've got some controls on your mobile device that are pretty easy to use, and they're pretty painless. You're not going to get pop-ups, this site needs your cookies, and so forth. You can simply, if you're using an Apple iOS device, open up your settings. We'll post actually instructions for somebody who wants to read it and see closely. But if you're using an iPhone, go into your settings, scroll down to privacy, and you'll see a setting there called limit ad tracking. Now, what Apple does, which is actually very helpful, is if you flip that switch, it nulls that ad ID. You no longer have an ad ID. You're going to be sending something like blah blah blah, and everybody who's nulled that looks like that, and that pretty much makes what Stacy has described something that really would not be feasible. Android also offers a version of this ad ID. I've got my phone here. I think it always is hard to show it in the video, so I'll take a screenshot. But you basically need to go into your settings, choose Google, and then ads. And then let's see if you folks can see this. I'm going to hold it here. Okay, do you see opt out of ads personalization and reset ad ID? So you got to use the reset ad ID. The opt-out of ads personalization will just send a friendly flag saying, please do not personalize my ads, and you will hope that app developers respect that. They could get kicked out of the App Store, but it doesn't technically prevent anything. If you hit reset the ad ID, Google will reset it. You get a new number, so you could be tracked for a short period of time, but if you reset it, the Apple one goes a bit further and actually clears it and keeps you out. So anyway, we hope that we didn't scare you, because most of the advertising you see, nobody's looking. It's a computer. It's optimizing. But if you don't like those ads being personalized for you, you find it too intrusive, take advantage, use the setting. And if you are one of the paranoid people, and it turns out it's not maybe completely paranoid, it can be done, then perhaps you certainly want to go ahead and take advantage of those settings so that this is not something that you stress about. You stressing out? Have you opted out?
I have, and I would be careful about using unsecured open networks in places like coffee shops.
Yeah, VPN. Don't be like me. I'm like, Gmail is encrypted. No one's going to be snooping on my traffic. You know what? It's not that hard. Get a VPN. There are mobile VPNs. They're free. Make sure they're not doing anything inappropriate with your data. Maybe we'll do another show on which VPNs are useful to use. For those who are more generalists here, a virtual private network is a program that you can download, and it puts all your traffic through an encrypted tunnel so that nobody on the outside can see what you're doing. And when you're on open Wi-Fi, you are at risk of somebody snooping. Many of the high-risk places you go, your bank, your email, are encrypting the traffic from the minute you go there, but you're safer with one of those VPNs. So, good tip. Thanks, folks. We'll post both a screenshot and directions on how to opt out and a link to the article for those of you who want to read more about this interesting research. Happy Thursday.